Thank you, Chairman. Thank you to our witnesses for being with us here today. I represent New York's 1st Congressional District, the eastern end of Long Island, a couple of hours outside of Manhattan. My district includes Hauppauge, the nation's 2nd largest industrial park outside of Silicon Valley. And more broadly, Long Island, the greater region, is home to 167 defense and aerospace companies comprising over 3 million square feet of industrial and commercial space, with over 10,000 full-time employees and $3 billion of economic activity. And as was noted in some of your opening testimony, with the decline of domestic industrial defense contractors, it's important to recognize and promote the existing ones, specifically where I'm from, Long Island's industrial defense industry, whose contributions help to keep our nation's military the greatest the world has ever known. With that in mind, and for any or all three of you, from a warfighting capability development perspective, what can our government learn from our partners in the private sector who are constantly working on the next generation of machinery and technology? Colonel, you seem like you might want to lean into that one.
Yes, I think we can, our military can learn quite a bit. I've noticed in my time when I was on the air staff, then OSD, when a chief of service or a senior leader, military or civilian, wanted to know about next generation technologies, they usually called their own labs. Oftentimes I've found that there is a better answer out in the defense industry, out in the commercial world. And having the ability to reach out and understand what is being developed, what is the maturity of that technology, and how that could be adapted to address many of the challenges our military faces is critically important. It's both a push-pull. Industry needs to have pathways to the government to inform, hey, this is what we've done. We think this can help. But our military needs to pull as well. They've got to be open to asking instead of just looking at their own labs. That's critically important.
In your mind, is that communication, is that collaboration happening at the right level right now?
Increasingly, yes. Enough, no. And that's why I'm a huge fan of things like war games, which will bring in industry along with operators and planners and strategists, maybe even a couple budget people, and get them together to deal with kind of an operational problem and say, and here people say, hey, you know, we have a new technology that can do this. We didn't know that. Can you produce that over next? Yes, we can. It's that kind of a dialogue that can really help inform our planners and lead to the creation of requirements, which will then lead to actual combat capabilities.
And I think I would add this, too, that I think one of the other important ingredients for this kind of interaction and dialogue is including more of the war fighters directly into the discussion. Instead of treating, well, either senior command or the offices of the secretary or other agencies to be intermediaries between industry and warfighters. Bring the warfighters in, show them what the capabilities are. Let them see, let them make suggestions, and I think a lot of very interesting and exciting things will start to happen, even with very small companies as well as with the largest.
I think one thing certainly that I would suggest the military learn from the private sector is the ability to compete based on time. Another book you might check into is George Stalk's book, Time-Based Competition. If you can move faster than your competition, you can adapt more quickly. Colonel Boyd mentioned it as getting inside their decision loop. But you know, look at the if you want to look at time-based competition, look at the American Navy in the period leading up to World War II. They created the industrial base that enabled them to outproduce the Japanese, you know, basically more quickly because you had a bigger base and a more adaptive base. If you look at the British, they pursued what was called the first and the second move advantage. If you can let your adversary move first, which was what the British did in the 19th century, because you can move faster than they can, then you see all their plans exposed. You know what direction they're going in. So your uncertainty about how to respond to them is much, much lower. if you can move faster than they can. And that's why the British, even though they had the world's best Navy, let the French go first in developing steam propulsion and first in terms of ironclad ships, two major innovations. And the British said, go first. We're not going to obsolete our own wooden ships until you go first. And once they did, the British outbuilt them.
And what we're seeing now is the Chinese have learned how to do that, taking technologies that we developed and using them and scaling them in ways that will make them incredibly effective militarily. We need to reverse that process.
Thank you. I yield.